All right, we are back. The Challenger Series has concluded. The 2026 Championship Tour season is upon us. We've got a lot to talk about. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with the one and only Mitch Salazar. Mitch, it is so good to have you back. It's been a long off season in a lot of ways, but I don't know, man. Like, it seems like it wasn't long enough for all that has happened since we crowned our world champs. There's so much to talk about, but first things first, Mitch, how are you doing today? Where am I talking to you from?
Yeah, doing super good, Dave. Really glad to be back, of course. But as you said, yeah, big long breaks in between a lot of the major events. I'm at home in Southern California right now. Was just in Santa Cruz over the weekend. Had a West Coast Bar Artists event over there. As you know, the club events now here in California and the rest of the United States. You know, they're taking on big and bigger steps, and hopefully we get to see a world champion out of it. We saw San Clemente be runner-up to the world title over there at Snapper Rocks, I believe, last month. And yeah, in development, but was great to be able to see the Challenger Series over at Newcastle too. Some big results, obviously. Alistair Reginato, Alyssa Spencer, two names that I probably wouldn't have thought that were going to win the event at the end. Lucas Cassidy, his best performance, was really stoked to see him make it all the way into finals day too. And of course, a lot of people had qualified, so Pipe was awesome, Newcastle was great, and now we're going to start the Championship Tour season in about a couple of weeks over at the Rip Curl Pro Bells Beach. So I'm excited. I know you are too, and a big change in the format as well. So a lot to talk about, Dave.
Yeah, lots to talk about. We did just wrap up the 2025-2026 Challenger Series season. We wrapped it with the BioGlan Newcastle Surf Fest presented by Bonsoy. First segment, Mitch, is we typically do winners and losers after a CT event. We are preseason. We can focus in on Newcastle, or I think we can maybe even talk about the entirety of the Challenger Series as we head into the 2026 Championship Tour season. So let's get into winners and losers, Mitch. From the last Challenger Series season, who you got for your first loser there?
Yeah, first loser is a tough one for me. Coming from North America, I get to see a lot of development throughout the regional QS, and it's a North American crew on both the men's and women's sides. Only one surfer was able to qualify, whether it was a male or a female. That was Alyssa Spencer, the former Championship Tour surfer. She's back on for 2026. Lost out with Levi Slauson at number 11. He won the U.S. Open during the 25-26 CS season, and Dimitri Poulos out of Ventura, California, number 13, really close as well. Started off super well at Newcastle at the beginning of the season, just wasn't able to get things going right here heading into finals day. And of course, Kira Pinkerton, longtime Challenger Series surfer. She's been very close. She finishes at number 10. But it's not an accurate illustration of how strong the region is right now. Back in 2023, as you know, about 60% of the men that qualified that year for the Championship Tour were from the region. Cole Houshman has had success as soon as he got on. We've seen Griffin Colapinto be runner-up to the world title. Caitlin Simmers, Caroline Marks, world champions already. So I feel in the near future, they're definitely going to be back. But as of right now, it definitely wasn't the showing that they wanted out of this season.
Interesting. I mean, we've been apart for a minute, Mitch, but I guess we did surf on Friday, so maybe the mind melds there because the first loser, in my opinion, coming out of the recently completed Challenger Series is the American male. In 2026, American males are adding not two, not one, but 0 surfers to the CT. I don't think people should try to claim Eli Hanneman. He is a Hawaiian, and the WSL, previously the ASP, regards Hawaii as its own sovereign surfing nation, so good for us there. You mentioned Encinitas' Levi Slauson finished just outside the qualifying bubble at number 11, Ventura's Dimitri Poulos at number 13, San Clemente's Cade Matson at 19, and Malibu's Tara Watanabe at number 20. Former CT surfer Alyssa Spencer is returning to the show on the women's side following her big win in Newcastle. So congrats to her. But the American men, tisk tisk. So Mitch, you mentioned you were up at Santa Cruz this weekend. You probably have your ear to the ground better than most people. What do you think it is? Is America the new Roman Empire? Have our decades of decadence and excess rendered American males spoiled, privileged, and lazy? What are your thoughts on this very hot topic?
I mean, I just think it's definitely one of the strongest regions there is. You look at the talent, Taj Lindblad, finally, after years of knocking on the door, he qualifies for the Challenger for 26, 27. I feel like there's definitely the talent right here. In my opinion, I think Levi had a couple of really bad luck heats after winning the U.S. Open. In Brazil, it went super slow at a pipe. He had one of those afternoon heats where it was pumping all morning, and then it went straight on shore. He tried a big straight air. It went on shore, and then he waited 20 minutes basically for a wave that never broke afterwards. Dimitri lost a couple close heats right there, and of course, both of them were in contention to qualify heading into finals day over there in Newcastle. Taro was definitely disappointing. He only caught one wave in his heat over there at Newcastle, which to me is a big surprise. Cade, I think so far, depending on the event, he's either doing extremely well or he's just a bit inconsistent. And I think that's where they need to find themselves once again. Just make sure that they're winning those tight heats and grind out a couple of fives if they need to. Meanwhile, on the women's side, Alyssa's back. She had a rocky start, eventually made up for it on the back end of the season. I think Kira's right there, though. I mean, number 10, she automatically requalifies for the Challenger Series for next season. But yeah, I think when it comes to the men, every now and then you need a rude awakening. This was it for them, and I think they're going to come back way stronger during next Challenger Series season.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, who do you got for your next loser coming out of this last season?
Yeah, that was really the only one that I had for the Challenger Series, honestly. I would really want to focus on the Championship Tour. And to me, one of the biggest stories out of the offseason was, not having Jeffreys Bay on tour anymore. And I know South Africa, the African region as a whole, has needed a big shakeup. They need development within the region. Morocco is a co-sanctioned event between the European WSL region and the Africa region. But we need Jeffreys Bay on the Championship Tour. Unfortunately, I think this is going to delay progress for them. And it just puts a major dent in the major events that we have in that region. Hopefully, it's only temporary. Not only do I think it's deserving to be on tour, but I also think that 95% of the surfers agree that this is one of their favorite stops, not only because of the quality of the wave, just because of what Jeffreys Bay means to them too outside of the water, Dave.
It's a great point. And I think we've seen it time and again, right? Like success on the Championship Tour in numbers always follows like a very strong domestic competitive event schedule, right? You can look back at the Bud Pro Tour that predated the Momentum generation on tour. Before the Brazilian Storm took over the Championship Tour, there's a very strong domestic circuit. And it's a great point. It's not enough just to have great waves. It's not enough just to have great surfers. You have to have those reps in the singlet if you're going to make a real push at the elite level. And hopefully you get to see something back, because obviously the surfers that come out of South Africa are world class time and time again. My second loser, I'm going to stick with the Challenger Series for a second, but I'm actually going to pick on a couple of winners. And my point on this one is that you know this better than I do, Mitch. Although maybe I know it better because I've had more struggles than you have here. But it is so hard to make a heat, any round, to win any surf event, whether that's a Pro Junior, a regional QS, definitely a Challenger Series event. And a win like that in those waves against that kind of competition, it really can be a career highlight in and of itself. However, no one on the CS wants it to be their career highlight. They want to win that event, they want to qualify for the CT, and they want to compete for world titles. And in 2025 and 2026, the CS winners that didn't qualify include the aforementioned Levi Slauson, won the US Open, finished just short of qualifying at number 11. And then there's Western Australia's Jacob Wilcox, who won the first CS event of the season, the first event at Newcastle back in 2025, don't ask. But he finished 12th, right? Personally, I love the way both these guys surf. I would have loved to have seen them on the CT, seeing Jacob come back and seeing Levi come on for the first time. But you know what? Special shout out to 2026 Newcastle winner, Alistair Reginato. He did win, didn't qualify, but only surfed 3 events this last season, so that's not exactly a campaign. But man, it must be a very, very difficult thing to be riding so high after winning a CS event and thinking, I'm on my way to the show. I'm going to be competing for a world title, and come up just short.
Right. And just to even add something more to that too, what about the people that didn't win events but they made a final and now they finally did qualify?
Sure.
I think Mateus Hurdy is the perfect example of that. I mean, he had been so close multiple times, right there in the top 10, heading into the last few events, and all of a sudden heartbreak hits him real bad in those decisive moments where he's just needing maybe a 5 or a 6, needs to make the heat, somebody else beats him, and he falls just short. And I truly feel for both Levi and Jake. It's already happened a couple times in the last few years. We saw Mikey McDonough win over there on the Gold Coast. We saw, of course, Jordy Lawler win at home in Narrabeen too.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that sting probably the worst, just because knowing that at one point you were probably considered the best surfer on the planet that given day, and then all of a sudden you have a downfall afterwards. So 10,000 points, obviously, for the win. Anything after that just needs to be a backup result. So it happens, and it happens a lot more than people think. They'll be back though. I'm truly very, very confident of that. But my third loser, and it's actually adding into this right now, because with the change in format that's going to come up over at Bell's, I think complacent surfers that maybe took, that non-elimination round a little too lightly, there's no way you can do that here anymore. And I just feel like those people, especially the ones that get fired up from the very start, and especially with the return of people like Gabe Medina, this is really going to be, from the get-go, I either have to win this first heat and make sure that I'm winning the entire event, or I better pack my bags and just be waiting on the next event. So I'm looking forward to it. I think Robert Bartholomew said it the best back in my day. These formats didn't exist before. It was always, head-to-head matchups, and people got eliminated from the start. And I think surfing had been the only professional sport where we did see people not lose in the very first round of competition. And now I think this is something that adds not only layers of excitement, I also think it just adds more professional perspective to what surfing not only deserved, but needs too. If we're going to be compared to those other levels of sports, we needed this change. And congratulations to you and the team, Dave, doing such an awesome job. And I'm really looking forward to it over at Bell's.
Yeah, well, I mean, to quote our former head judge, Richie Porta, it's a harsh game. Right. And you're right. Like the non-elimination round or the non-elimination heats were not something that was a part of the sport for a long, long time. In 2026, it is going to be head-to-head competition, elimination from round one. And yeah, mind meld again. My loser's a little bit kind of forward thinking, and anyone, whether they're a CT surfer or a CS qualifier or a wild card coming back to the tour, that thinks they can rest on their laurels in a non-elimination round heat, they're going to be in for a rude awakening, right? And it's tough. Like we deal with the most dynamic field of play in all of sports. It's the ocean. It can go quiet. It can be slow. But you got a 30-minute heat, a 35-minute heat. It's the same conditions that your opponent's having to deal with. And yeah, you're just going to have to kind of put it on the line and make it a show, which, you mentioned Gabriel Medina before, and, every surfer that qualifies for the CT is in such a rarefied air in terms of accomplishment. All of them are legitimately the best surfer you will ever see live, right? But there are still some that rise to the top, even in that elite field. And whether it's a Gabe, whether it's a John, whether it's a Carissa or a Steph, the fact that they're able to win so consistently in such a dynamic field of play, I think actually makes their achievements that much more impressive, because they're playing through something that no other sport has to deal with. But yeah, it'll be exciting. April 1st, day one of the season, Rip Curl Pro Bells Beach, presented by Bonsoy. How about winners, Mitch? Who you got for winners from this off season heading into 2026?
I mean, the first one's super obvious. It's one of my real good buddies that I've, been able to make over the last few years. It's Kali Vost and the young phenom Tia Zabrowski. So the French-Tahitian powerhouse duo, they win the Challenger Series on each side, which is not only impressive, I think it showed their dominance and their adaptability in big moments too. Kali made 3 finals this season on the Challenger Series. Newcastle, one in Edesada, and then final at Newcastle right here to end the season. Tia Zabrowski, youngest ever to qualify back in October. She was still 14. She's 15 right now.
That's crazy.
But guess what? She never had a result worse than a quarterfinal finish this year. It's outstanding. She wins the Challenger Series, the youngest to ever qualify, the youngest ever to win the Challenger Series. They both win in Edesada, and I'm just super impressed. I think France really put their money where their mouth was, and I think the Euroforce maybe more on the effect of the women's side, but they're definitely developing on the men's side, and I'm super excited to see what both of them do, especially with a couple of differences in the calendar. I think the addition to Raglan especially is going to be monumental for both of them, Dave.
It's a great point. And, Tia may have qualified at 14, but she surfs big and she surfs strong and she surfs fast. And I remember watching her surf before I kind of clocked how old she was and someone mentioned it. That is unbelievable. She is a CT caliber surfer and it's going to be exciting to see. And, my first winner coming out of the close of the Challenger Series are the EMEA, the Europe, Middle East, and Africa regional women. They took 5 out of the 7 women's qualifying spots off the Challenger Series. We mentioned Tia Zaborowski surfing for France, Yolanda Hopkins and Francisca Vaselko surfing for Portugal, Nadia Aristarbe surfing for the Basque Country, and then Anat Lelior surfing for Israel. It's just an awesome showing for a region that historically hasn't been a dominant force, really at any level when you kind of compare it to the rest of the world. So it was great to see them turn out this year, and I'm really excited to see what they can achieve on the CT this season.
I'm pretty sure you looked at my notes and you stole that one from me because, I have the female Euro force on my end too as a winner and a huge winner too.
Let's not say steal, just say great minds. Great minds, man. We can have a mind meld every now and then.
You borrowed it just for a moment, but no, I mean, being real, this is huge.
It's massive.
And if there's 2 regions, in my opinion, that needed this, it's definitely Europe and Africa. So the fact that we saw not only the European women dominate, Anat Lelior become the first Israeli woman to qualify for the championship tour. And she is truly born and raised in Israel, too. She's not one of those people that moved out of the country. Yeah, she's traveled a lot competing. Sure. 2-time Olympian now on the championship tour. Like, very impressive stuff in a really short period of time. Outside of that, too, Aneta Gonzalez Echevarri, she finished at number 8. So she's in line really much to surf a couple of events in case people get injured, too. Nadia Aristarbe, first time ever we've seen a full-time bass surfer on the women's side on tour. First time we've ever seen a full-time Portuguese female surfer on tour. Yolanda Hopkins qualifying over there in Brazil. And then Kika Vaselko, former world junior champ, she's in the mix too. And of course, want to say a big shout out to Sally Fitzgibbons, who was able to requalify as well. I mean, she had a real under-the-radar successful season on the Challenger Series, but just because so much was happening with everybody else, she kind of went a little low profile. But I think these European women have really paved the way and showed that there's a possibility to achieve success within your region, eventually take that and materialize it over the course of a few years on the Challenger Series, because it's not like, it was one thing overnight, Tia had already competed last year. Yo-Yo's been knocking on the door for a few years right now. Kika winning World Juniors back at Seaside Reef in 2023. And Nadia's been, surfing in a couple CT events too, because she's done so well in the Challengers the last few years. So this is something that's materialized over the course, over the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm truly here for it. I think they needed a big push. They're getting it right now, Dave.
Yeah, that's a great one. And, second winner for me, it's probably an obvious one, but maybe it's also a non-obvious one. But it's the men's winner of the BioGlen Newcastle Surf Fest presented by Bonsoy, the Sunshine Coast's Alistair Reginato. Now, I know what people are probably thinking out there. It's, Dave, I'm not spending my valuable seconds of my life to hear your subjective winner hot take be the actual winner of the recently completed event. And you'd be completely within your rights to think that. But by all accounts, Reggie, as he's known to his buddies, one of the nicest guys on tour. He's 25 years young. The guy puts in one of the performances of the event at the Australian Board Riders Battle for the North Shore Board Riders at Burleigh Heads. Drives all night just to make his opening round heat in Newcastle and post the biggest win of his career. And, he only surfed 3 events last year on the Challenger Series. So what I mean by non-obvious is that the depth of talent out there around the world at every level of the sport is so vast, right? He's not exactly one of the favorites to come in and win the event. By the end of the event, he was undeniable. So congrats to him. I hope we get to see more of him, especially on the Challenger Series next year. And who knows, he's young enough, we could see him make a run for the CT quite easily in the next year.
Yeah, he actually did qualify once again for the Challengers throughout the regional QS. Looking at it right now, number 6. Yeah. So he's been here before. I remember meeting him at the US Open a few years ago. Real nice kid. Actually works at a surf shop back home in Australia too. And, without the proper funding right now, this kid's, having to pay a lot of it himself. And I think these are the stories that you really want to hear about. People often, to drive Uber, take these odd jobs. But in the end, everybody talks about sacrifice. the way they look at it, and I think the way both you and I look at it too, it's not really a sacrifice if you love what you're doing. And these kids make a living doing anything they can just to be able to fund their dreams of becoming a pro surfer. Never know. In 12 months, this kid could be on the championship tour and try to surf over their bells too to start the season.
Man, it's such a good point. And not to bring it back to my first loser, quote unquote, the American male, but I think there is something in, if everything is democratized in surfing, your access to boards, your access to the best technique, your access to the best training, and everyone is so good, then really the point of difference becomes motivation. Like if your kid like Reggie is working at a surf shop as opposed to another kid that's, homeschooled, been making millions of dollars since they were 12, but goes around the world, Indies Trader 4-6 times a year. I'm not knocking that. I'm not hating it. That's the game. You do your thing. That's amazing. I am jealous, to be honest. But when it comes to putting a singlet on, when it comes to battling someone else in the same conditions with something on the line, that point of difference makes a big difference. And we've seen it with the Brazilian Storm. We've seen it with virtually every world champion that's come up, is they've come from a background where they're hungry. So good for Reggie and good for the surf shop kids.
Sometimes in order to recognize how valuable something is, you truly need to experience your very first true loss. And I think that for Alistair, when he fell off the Challenger a few years ago, had to requalify through the regional QS, and an extremely strong region, of course. They have a lot of surfers inside the top 20. Australia qualified the most surfers on the Championship Tour on the men's side this year. But I think what it does, it's just eye-opening, and this can end real quick. But if you get back on your horse and you try, there's always a tomorrow. And these stories of success to me are really cool. And I think, that kind of brings me back to my third winner. How good is the Championship Tour and how much are we winning with the CT in 2026? Obviously, the change in format, a huge thing. The addition of Raglan, Performance Left on tour, super excited. Fiji being back on tour full time as well. I think the restructuring of the schedule, though, is something major that a lot of people still, in my opinion, aren't talking enough about. Obviously, returning to a semi-old format, but no non-elimination round, finishing with the Pipe Masters, but that event counts as 15,000 points. And then the mini postseason that we have, too, lowers back on tour, Abu Dhabi. I'm here for it. And I think the CT this year is going to be one of the best we've ever had, especially with the re-addition of Medina and a couple of real big strong women's wildcards, too. I know Carissa Moore's coming back, too, Dave.
They're all coming back. It's an exciting year. And yeah, it heads into our next segment. We can pivot in a minute. But yeah, my final winner coming off the Challenger, or the Changas, as the cool people call it, is something we're going to talk about in the next segment. But it is the Australian Shapers. They took 9 out of the 17 qualifying positions. There was 5 for DHD, 3 for JS, and 1 for Luke Short Designs. For Darren Handley, he's adding Callum Robson, maybe Luke Thompson. Luke also surfs for Smith Shapes, Liam O'Brien, Francisco Veselko, and Nadia Arostarbe. The tractor team at JS is adding Cowley Vost, Samuel Pupo, and Mateus Hurdy, and Luke Short Designs is joining the fight with Oscar Berry. So huge showing from the Australian board riders coming in from the CS, and it'll be interesting to see how they go on the CT this season.
Gonna be fun. I'm here for it. Let's go.
Well, we're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk surfboards. All right, welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Mitch Salazar. Mitch, it's time to talk about surfboards, something that's near and dear to both our hearts. The CT Shaper Rankings. You and I have been running this since 2023. It's a combined ranking of men's and women's performances on the boards of the world's best CT shapers. 3 years running, back-to-back-to-back wins for San Clemente's, Matt Biolis, and Lost Surfboards. It's been an amazing run, like a mid-90s Chicago Bulls level run. That said, Mitch, it should be called out. The genesis for the CT Shaper Rankings program actually came from observing Marcio Zuvi and Sharp Eye on tour in the early 2020s. And I actually, in this offseason, went back and reran like a mock rankings for the 2022 season, which was the year before we started the actual CT Shaper Rankings. And Sharp Eye would have won that year. And I bring this up because even though we assume that Lost would have been competitive, I don't think any of us, even the crew at Lost, thought it would end up like this, like the last 3 years, and just being so dominant. So before we dive into what we're doing for 2026, Mitch, a little bit of your thoughts just on the sharp eye phenomenon of the early 2020s and certainly the last few years of dominance by Lost surfboards.
Yeah, it's a good reference right there with the Chicago Bulls back in 1993. Couple of three-peats, right? And I think that's definitely what we've seen from Mayhem so far. I think they've really benefited off of their strong women's team. Caroline Marks, Carissa Moore, Gabby Bryan have made a huge impact for them. Of course, Aaron Brooks now making the championship tour, I think, is also going to be a major addition. I think Felipe has a lot to do with not only the success of Sharp Eye, but also the success of performance surfing on the championship tour within the last decade and a half as well. Speaking about Sharp Eye, though, they were really underground until, the early 2010s. Marcio had already been living there for a while in San Diego, and I remember riding a couple of his boards. He signs Felipe, prices go through the roof, but guess what? You're a businessman too, and you got to be able to run a business successfully that way. And props to him and his entire team. Taylor Clark over there in Encinitas, he's actually making a lot of the boards for a lot of the Challenger Series and CT guys, including young Jake Marshall. And I feel like this year they're definitely contenders, especially, with the addition of a couple of those surfers on the men's and women's side. So I'm excited. I think they're definitely one of the catalysts. Are they going to be the champion? I don't know. But what I can say, number 3, Morgan Siblick, to me, he was one of the most impressive surfers on the men's Challenger Series this year. I think he's going to be a major addition for them, especially being one of the top seeds come out of the CS.
It's a great point. I mean, Morgan was a world title contender. He was a WSL Final 5 member, and he's been on the CT before. He can win heats. He can really be explosive. It's a great point. And the way we've done this the past 3 years, we have counted all the results quarterfinals or better for the CT Shaper rankings. So there were 16 results up for grabs, 8 men, 8 women per event. So theoretically, a single team could have taken all 16 results. Now, never came close to that. But Mitch, as you and I have been discussing for a few years, the rankings certainly favor teams that are bigger. And we'd kind of identified 3 general tiers in terms of team sizes. But I didn't really mind that we ran it that way because the world's best surfers have agency in who they choose to ride for. And I like that it was reflected in that. Like they could ride for any board builder. A lot of them chose to ride for Lost, and Lost certainly took advantage of that. But we always saw a lot of performance at the other tiers as well. Smaller programs like Patterson posted big wins, or Borst on Katie Simmers had some big wins. So, I mean, the tiers thing, Mitch, what do you think about that? And as we kind of move into 2026?
It's funny because, Tia Zabrowski obviously winning the Challenger Series, big addition to the Sharp Eye team too. I think their manager, Yufu Penrose, did an amazing job recruiting a lot of the women too. You have Lulu Silva, who's already on the tour. Of course, Alyssa Spencer requalifying. I think she's going to be huge. I agree with you. And in a sense, I do disagree. I know there's some teams that are larger and that they've had more success with certain surfers. That being said, though, I mean, it's the same thing you brought up. You can choose whoever you want to. Sometimes a deal is a deal and you get, a better contract. You get more of the spotlight. And I understand that, but there's times where you just know that a certain board works better, and deep down, you got to trust your gut. And I think that's what a lot of people have done. I think that's why Yago and his loyalty to Mayhem over the last decade, or even more than that, has been something that's really developed their relationship, especially with the absence of a couple of people on tour last year. They were able to redefine things even more. And we've seen the same thing on the women's side, too. I mean, Katie Simmers, Chris Borst, she hasn't left him. Yet, at least. And I think that's a relationship that at the moment is going to go in the long run as one of the most successful collaborations in the history of surfing. Dane Reynolds, longtime CI surfer, he's still with them. He's no longer on tour, but guess what? He's been loyal to them the entire time. So to me, I think that matters a lot, especially in an industry that is quite small, if I'm honest. So I like it. But that being said, you can surf for whoever you want, and sometimes you just need to make a buck, and I understand it. You got to be able to make a living out of this too, Dave.
For sure. Well, all of that taken in mind, this gets us to the big update for the CT Shaper rankings in 2026. After extensive feedback from the shaping community, as well as modeling a lot of potential adjustments, we're updating the way we calculate the rankings in 2026. Moving forward, the rankings formula will be as follows. The CT Shaper rankings will still continue to rank all CT Shapers across all CT events this coming season. Shapers will continue to receive points from their surfers for each CT event for quarterfinal placings or better. However, these results will now be maxed at 2 results per board program per event. So a board builder's CT Shaper rankings results can come from their top 2 men's results or their top 2 women's results, or one of each, again, just for quarterfinals or better placings. And just for everyone out there, we did run this model across the 3 previous seasons, and Lost Surfboard still wins every year, but the competition is much tighter. Now, what do they say? A chip in a chair. If you've got 2 surfers on the program, you're in the mix, buddy. What do you think about the update, Mitch?
I think it's great. I mean, if it's going to make things tighter and people are going to be, happier about that, especially the guys that have missed out by just a little bit right there. And, I think big props to Jason Stevenson too and his incredible team. I think they're going to be a major contender now with this change. And then there's some people that care, but they're pretty indifferent too. I think Timmy Patterson's one of those guys, as you said, one of the smaller programs. He only has the 2 surfers with Allen and Italo on his team. But guess what? He's like, hey, I got my loyal customers. I got the core people behind me. They know what to expect out of a board shaped by me. And in the end, I think this is actually going to make things really exciting and really comfortable for a lot of people that have a smaller team, but a very significant team. And given that we have seen a big update for certain shapers and bigger labels like DH and Jason Stevenson have a bigger number of riders with the CS qualification, I'm really excited to see how that really matches up, especially in the back end of the year.
Well, let's talk about that because we're recording this. It's March 16th. We are 2 weeks out from the start of the CT season. 2 weeks is an eternity between surfers and board builders. A lot can change in that time, right? But if we take a look as a finger in the wind, best we can tell, the teams for the board builder programs this year, let's run through a few of these. We talked about how sizing-wise, there used to kind of be 3 tiers. There was sort of the big tier, there was the middle tier, and then there were the sort of the smaller tier. It's really splitting into 2 at the moment. And in the upper tier, in terms of like team sizes, Lost Surfboards has 11, DHD has 11, Sharp Eye has 9, JS has 8, Channel Islands has 7. Again, if we're only counting the top 2 results max per event, those are probably the groups that are competing amongst one another throughout the year. And let's take it. Let's do the 3-time CT Shaper of the winner in Lost Surfboards. On the men's side, they've got world champ Iago Dora. They've got both Colapinto brothers. They've got Cole Hauschman and CS winner Eli Hanneman. On the women's side, they've got former world champ Caroline Marks, Gabby Bryan, Betty Lucicura Johnson, Aaron Brooks, Sawyer Lindblad, and returning 5-time world champ Carissa Moore. They're looking pretty mean this year at the moment. Any thoughts on the Lost program, Mitch?
Still as strong as ever. I think the re-addition, the reintegration of Carissa back on tour is going to be something major for them too. I like that she's changed up a lot of her quiver too. I feel like, there was a moment where you kind of get on something that you really like and know that works, but you want to spice things up a little bit. And I know during her downtime, her maternity leave, she was riding a couple of different shapes and, mid-lengths, longer boards. And I feel like that's, something that's really going to benefit your surfing. Watch out for Sori Lindblad. I think she's going to have another great season. I feel like she could be a top 5 contender. Betty Lou Sakura Johnson finishing in the top 5 last year. She's going to be good. Gabby Bryan working with Jason Shibata now. I like that in her corner. She obviously won a pipe during the Challenger Series event too. She's kind of on a streak. Eli Hanneman, toss-up. Can he perform the way he knows and we know that he can surf outside of a jersey? Now can he do it on the championship tour? Cole Pinto's obviously a threat. Cole's won 2 events, and Iago, there's not enough to be said about that guy. So they're just as strong as ever, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, the thing on Carissa Moore, she was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that it was interesting to hear her take on is just, how how surfing for her whole life has been such a mental exercise, and when she's on up here between the ears, she's almost unbeatable. But that's like the biggest challenge for her, and becoming a mom and becoming a parent and evolving in that way, it's like a perspective cannon. She's like, it actually quiets a lot of the voices in my head, because at the end of the day, I have this little person and they're the priority. So I'm really interested to see how that translates to her surfing on tour, because when she's on, she's just unbeatable. Let's run through a couple more programs real quick. We talked about Darren Handley being the big winner from the Challenger Series. Women's side, he has reigning women's world champ Molly Picklum, Isabella Nichols, returning 8-time GOAT world champion Stephanie Gilmore, and then CS surfers Veselko and Arostarbe. On the men's side, he's got Ethan Ewing, Connor O'Leary, Joel Vaughn, Callum Robson, Luke Thompson potentially, and O'Brien. What do you think of the DH team? I know DH is super competitive, and there's some hitters on that team this year.
That's an incredible team. It shows the loyalty of the Australians to a local brand too. I mean, I can't really see too many surfers. Luke Thompson, Nadia, and Kika, really the only internationals right there. Props to Liam, man. I mean, he really tried. He finished at number 10, and Levi gave it a good shot right there at the end, but he finished just outside at number 11. But DH looks good. He's competitive as hell too. You know that. He wants, to be the leader in everything he does. I think Steph could have a great year, or, she could just be around. Haven't seen a whole lot of her outside of, just surfing at home over on the Goldie. Love the way Kika surfs, very aggressive. Isabella's been on a tear. She had, one of her best years last year, winning an event too over at Bell's. Can't say enough good things about Molly. Always super impressed. I saw her over on the North Shore, spent some time with her outside of the water. She's in a really good headspace. Men's side, Luke, very impressed with him. I thought he surfed great at J-Bay last year as a wild card against Jordy. Cal on a tear, winning a pipe, doing super well at Newcastle. Joel, one of the best and most complete surfers on the planet. Connor, great backhand, he's won. And Ethan, we're still waiting for him to become world champion. So I think he's the next Alpha 4 world title contender out of Australia. And for DH, 11 surfers though, that's major. That's easily the most they've ever had on tour, at least that I can remember, Dave.
No question. And Ethan Ewing announced as the next stab in the dark surfer. I've actually seen some sneaky footage. I'm really excited about that one. Sharp Eye, they're up next with 9. We have to go through everybody, but I think, Felipe Toledo, Leonardo Fioravanti, Jake Marshall, Rio Waida, Seth Muniz. We mentioned Morgan Sibilic, big addition off the CS. And then Luana Silva, Alyssa Spencer, and we've talked about our Tia Zabrowski, big addition off the CS. What do you think about the additions to the Sharp Eye team, Morgan and Tia there?
Yeah, very fast. I think Tia's main and strong point is her power, but she brings a different spark too, something we haven't seen recently on the women's side of the championship tour. And then of course the mentality of like, hey, I'm 15 years old. What's the worst that can happen? Go back to Tahiti, enjoy the time off over there with my family. Like, doesn't sound too bad to me. And then you still have an entire life to live outside of competitive surfing too. So saying that though, she's competitive as hell. I know she wants to go out there and dominate from the very start. In my opinion, she's going to be Rookie of the Year. I think she's already looking good. She's already had a couple of great waves at Bell's. And of course, Rip Curl being right there, her main sponsor, she's going to have a lot of support. So I think she looks great. Excited to see Morgan. He struggled with confidence the last few years. And I feel like this season on the Challenger Series, that completely went out the window. He looks so good. I was extremely impressed with him at Pipe too. I saw him throw himself over the ledge on certain waves that I hadn't seen before. So I think that's a big change for him. It seems like his confidence right now is as high as it's ever been.
Let's talk about JS. JS has been one we've kept our eye on the last few years. They've been in sort of a rebuild mode. They have the one major confirmed signing of the offseason so far. We're going to get to another rumor here in a minute in Jack Robinson. Jack Robinson is officially signed with the JS program. A few weeks ago, Parko was on the podcast and he was talking about it. And you and I have been talking about it because we've seen it on his Instagram. But he said it and he's like, actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that yet. It's official. But Jack is officially on the tractors. He Jones, an all-men's team on the CT this year. Kanoa Igarashi, Miguel Pupo, Marco Migno, Cowley Vost, Samuel Pupo, Matthias Hurdy, and Ramsey Bukayam. all men's isn't really going to penalize you this year if it's top two max, right? Like,
Great point.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays into it. But real quick on the Jack signing, what are your thoughts on that, Jack moving to JS?
Well, my main thing is who's going to be the top dog on the team, because him and Kanoa rode for Sharp Eye at the same time too, and they were always kind of competing to see who was going to be right there at number one, with Felipe as a strong contender too, right? Because Felipe's always kind of been the top guy at Sharp Eye, and they were always like nibbling at the bit right there.
Of course.
Now Kanoa's been on the team longer. So is he going to get priority over Jack Robinson? That's going to be a great question. And how fast are we going to see the assimilation of these boards, considering that he is, the defending champion over there at Bells Beach as well? So I think this is going to be something interesting. I think it's a good relationship. He's been living on the Gold Coast. That's where Jason's from. He's obviously done a lot of research too. And they've had a really good season over there on the east coast of Australia too. So I think he's been putting in a lot of time with those boards.
It's a good point. I guess on the competitive side of like who's the big dog in the stable, they do have a very globally balanced program, right? Jack's the only Australian. Kanoa, Asia and America. You have the Pupo brothers, and now Matias coming out of Brazil. You got Marco coming out of France and Ramsey coming out of Morocco. So one would hope like that regional balance helps temper any kind of competition. But I was talking to Joel about this not long ago too, where I'm like, at some point Andy started riding the tractors. Who was getting their boards first, right? Like there's every program is going to have that. Who's the priority? And speaking of priorities, let's talk about our friends to the north here in Santa Barbara, Britt Merrick, Brent Power, and the Channel Islands team. They're coming into the season officially right now with 7. We got Darren Mamiya, Zhao Xianca, George Pitar from Australia is returning to the tour, joined by the women Lakey Peterson, Vahina Fierro, Bella Kenworthy, and Brisa Hennessy. But the big rumor this offseason is the big scary Tyrannosaur, 3-time world champion Gabriel Medina. If you've been watching his Instagram, you've seen the Channel Islands, the hexes underfoot. What do we think about this? Is he gonna be riding these exclusively this year? Are we gonna hear a big signing in the next 2 weeks, Mitch? What do you think?
I'd love that. I know that I'm not the only one too. It's so funny too, because there's been some funny, interesting posts that he's had on his Instagram where like he has like 6 or 7 of them laid out in the background, and he's still kind of waxing the Cabianca. And we love the guys over at CI, Britt and Brent. They're all super cool. Mike Walters, the entire team. I mean, and they put in a ton of effort. They're at every event. Those guys show up no matter what for their team, and they're some of the raddest dudes you can hang out with too. And they've definitely tried to get big acquisitions, big signings, and they have them on their team too.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know how talented Darren Mamiya is. I mean, we've only seen him scratch the surface when it comes to his performance surfing. Because at Pipe, he might be, outside of John Florence, the best surfer on the planet out there right now. And maybe even better than John. I mean, he's beaten him the last 2 years in competition. But they need to be able to put it together during a complete season. One win, in my opinion, isn't enough for them anymore. And this is where you got to be able to be balanced. Joao Xianca, there's a lot expected of him too, especially, with him being the top dog out of Brazil right now for the CI team. I think Bella Kenworthy still has a lot to prove. She was able to requalify outside of the top 10 last year on the women's side. Lakey Peterson, she's obviously been a long-time contender on the Championship Tour. She's up there too for them. And of course, I think a lot of people also expect a lot from the Central American surfer, Brisa Hennessy. There's a lot to be said about Brisa's success in the past. Has she been able to sustain that over the last few seasons? Yes and no, because I think in the end, if you're not winning, you're probably not as successful as everybody expects you to be. So there's a lot of answers right there, Dave, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I think we'll be seeing a few of them in the first 3 or 4 events.
Yeah, and back on the Medina thing, it's a huge swing, right? You're putting your label under the feet of someone who's already been so successful. So the bar for elevating that person is already so high, but if the look of what we've seen on sort of social media so far is any indication, he looks really sharp on those boards. An interesting wrinkle, right, is he has been riding, I don't know about exclusively, but certainly in a few clips, he's been riding the Mikey February shortboard model as well, which is a very yin and yang approach in terms of how they surf, right? Mikey's a fantastic surfer himself, but you wouldn't put him and Gabe next to one another in terms of their approach to wave riding.
And I will say another thing too, he looks huge. It seems like he's even put on more muscle mass since the last time we saw him on tour. So I think the volume's gone up. I think the dimensions have definitely gotten a bit larger too. But all in all, as you said, the clips that we have seen of him on the Channel Islands have looked incredible. It's whether or not, they're able to make a financial decision that's, sustainable enough for him to make that commitment. And in the end, this is one of the guys that has changed the sport for better and for good in that sense. Once the industry kind of started to make a change, he was still one of the more successful ones out there. He still has been. Made a lot of good investments with his money once he was able to get those big contracts with Rip Curl and his other sponsors. So he's deserving of it for sure. He's changed the sport, and this is where it's going to be one of those things where, hey, I know what I'm worth. I know my value. Are you able to put up? And I think we have a couple of weeks to potentially get that answer out of them.
Yeah. We talked about there being, at the moment, obviously things can change, but it looks like two general tiers, right, for the board programs this year. We talked about the big programs. We talked about Timmy Patterson's got Italo Ferreira, Al Cleland, definitely a chip in the chair guy. There's another handful of shapers at the moment that have one surfer to their program right now on the CT. There's Smith Shapes with Jordy Smith, SRS with Alejo Muniz, LSD with Oscar Berry, Cabianca, maybe, with Gabriel Medina, Chris Borst with Katie Simmers, John Peisel, one surfer on tour this year in Tyler Wright, Fathom Surfboards with Yolanda Hopkins, and TNC Surf with Sally Fitzgibbons. Mitch, what do you think? Do you think that's the roster that we're heading into Bells in? Or do you think, outside of what we've already talked about with Gabe, do you think anyone else shifts? Do you think some of these one board or one team rider board programs consolidate? Do you think some of the other programs look to poach from those smaller groups?
So let's throw out a quick story. I'm driving up to Santa Cruz on Thursday. I make my way up to Ventura. I hit up Dave. I'm like, hey, you want to go for a morning surf over there and catch a couple of fun ones for an hour? We end up paddling out. We probably talk more story than we do surfing, actually, in between like our waves. And the main thing was, what does Jordy Smith do heading into almost year 20 on tour right now, especially after an incredible year, a successful year last year on the Championship Tour? I think he looked great on every board he rode, but it seemed like he was very aligned with the Peisels. And I think the one thing that was always keeping him off of Peisels was that John is still the guy, but he was the guy on the Championship Tour. And with John not being on tour this year, there's a chance for him to get a ton of exposure that way. So that might be the only one where I see truly he rides them more than his dad's boards. And I mean, the Medina thing is obviously still in question. I wouldn't be surprised if, Luke Short just tells Oscar, hey, you know what? I respect if somebody comes up to you and gives you a contract and you go with somebody else. I understand. It's a smaller label. Luke Short, great shaper. He made a lot of boards for Julian back in the day. But I think if somebody comes up and it's like, hey, if you're going to give me more exposure on the tour, I'm going to give you a good paycheck with it. But this is where I think Peisel has a good chance to potentially get Jordy for at least, 8 or 9 events. Because out of all of those last year, he looked incredible on them. He
looked pretty good. And it seems to me like it's a relationship that cuts both ways. Like, it's not just the surfer feeling like, am I going to be the top dog in the program? It's also the shaper going like, well, maybe I don't want to make boards for you. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I want to make boards for the guys I have or the girls I have, and that's it. And so, yeah, lots to keep an eye on, heading into Bells. I hope we get to talk about all these shapers moving forward. I'm excited for it. Before we go, Mitch, you mentioned you and I got to catch up for a quick surf on Friday, but what have you been riding yourself?
Yeah, I got a couple of great boards. I want to give a big shout out to Brent Power, though, at Channel Islands. He sent me a board bag in a very special way. I appreciate you guys a ton. I've actually been riding one of their boards, the CI Happy, that I still have. It's about 3 or 4 years old. But the last few days, it's one of those ones that I know works in certain types of waves. And it's a good all-around board, but I think it's kind of on its way out. So just in case it breaks, I was like, okay, it'll go in peace. There's a reason why it's called the Happy. I'm gonna go out with a smile on my face. But been riding the Stub Driver 3.0 from Mayhem 2. Really good all around board, but especially in beach breaks, it works super well. I have the Driver 3.0 that I'm super stoked on, and then I also have a Pizel White Tiger for when it's small, especially in an epoxy. It's a dark arts. I'm in love with it. Don't ride it as often though, just because, you know, there's something about having to get a PU board, the responsiveness under your feet that I really like. But yeah, all in all, I know it hasn't been the best of winters when it comes to consistency, but I've had a fun one. And the good thing about having multiple boards is that you can have fun on anything, Dave. What about yourself?
Oh, good for you, buddy. I've just been focusing in on my EPS better every day with only a quad setup, which is kind of an aggressive move for me because I like to have like options, but I actually feel like I'm getting older. Removing the options and simplifying what I have in front of me has gone pretty well. And yeah, we had some fun waves on Friday, and actually kind of got to surf it both Saturday and Sunday. I got a bit bigger and it felt really good. So I think I'm gonna stick with that and ride it until it leaves me. But appreciate all the board builders out there, and everyone. Like it like truly, it takes so much work and time and effort and investment, even just to have one surfer at the elite level. And we love talking about the shapers, the sanders, you know, the team managers, the board models, and how what they're doing at the bleeding edge of performance surfing is trickling across equipment for all of us. And so appreciate what everyone does out there. I can't wait to talk more CT Shaper rankings this season. We got a couple more topics to get to. We got one more break from our sponsors, and we will be right back. All right, welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Mitch Salazar. Between now and the start of the season on April 1st, we're going to provide everyone with a lot more information on Fantasy Surfer. We've got some new games coming. It's pretty exciting. We're also going to continue to run the Lineup Podcast Mega League. So we're going to be providing details for everyone. Follow us at Instagram and at the Lineup Pod. We'll give you guys those there. We have prizes going out this year. It's a lot of fun. We had a ton of teams in last year, and then Mitch and myself talk about how well we didn't do event by event. So keep an eye out for that, and hope everyone joins the Lineup Podcast Mega League. Mitch, I think we got some listener questions.
Yeah, we definitely do, and always thank you guys so much for writing in at the Lineup Pod. If we don't get to your question today, we'll do our best as always to respond in our DMs or potentially get to it in a later episode. Let's start things off at Lonnie_Coco. Oh, this one's directly at you pretty much, Dave. I'm just playing. It's actually a good one for both of us. Who's your pick as first-time winner on the men's side and the women's side, starting off strong in 2026?
Oh, shoot. First-time winner. So, like, no one hasn't won a CT before.
I would think that's the question because we have had qualifiers win challenges.
Yeah,
so,
tough, right?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's CT events.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll start with the women's side. I was going to say, yeah, this should be easier because there's less of them, but there's actually so many of them have won CT events already. Look, I mean, we've talked about her a little bit. Like, I just am so impressed with Tia Zabrowski. And I think she surfs at a big league level. I think she's really polished. This might be a little bit... maybe not that controversial. I don't know. Maybe people just think she's ready for the show, but I can see her doing well. I can see her actually bagging a win here early on, just because she is really well-rounded, really strong, really fast. So that's going to be my pick on the women's side. On the men's side, holy crap, I got to go through people who have not won a CT event here, and this is really going to test my test my memory here. I'm getting, man, okay.
So 1 through
4.
8 have won CT events already. Last year's
on the men's
top 8,
and then after that, 10 through 14 have.
Yeah, a lot.
Man,
it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Oh man. Okay, I said Tia for them. Okay. Shoot. Okay, this is good podcasting. Man, okay. Well,
bear with it, people.
Bear with us. I'm gonna do Morgan Sibilic.
Ooh. Wow.
We've talked him up a little bit. I mean, the boys at Sharp
He has made a final before.
Can be proud, I guess. We've got Tia and Morgan on my picks, but like, I was always so impressed with Morgan on tour the first time around. And he just had one of those seasons where it didn't click. He was in the wilderness for a bit. You mentioned how like confident he looked on the CS this year. Hopefully he's older. Hopefully he's wiser. He just is so strong and so fast and so dangerous. I can see him. This isn't a 1-to-1 comparison, but someone like Matt Wilkinson, who was on tour for a number of years and then caught fire like early on in the year. I think it was 2015, won back-to-back events. And it wouldn't shock me if Morgan did something similar, especially with these first 4 events happening across the Australia, New Zealand region there. So yeah, those are my picks. That was a tough question, but what about you, Mitch? Who you got?
I like the second one. And the one thing I will say about Morgan is that he has experience not only at certain waves, but also, you know, the aspect outside of it, how to get there, how to travel to the location. He spent multiple years, you know, as a Rip Curl team rider at Bell's outside of the contest too. And especially it being the first one this season, you know, in comparison to event 3 or 4 now, that's major. I don't disagree with that. I think it's actually a good call. I'm going to go with Alan Cleland though. He's coming off of a second place finish at the QS 6000 in Barbados. Loses to Taj Lindblad, who eventually, you know, qualifies for the Challenger Series within the North America region. But I was really impressed with Alan and the fact that he didn't need to go and do that event, but knowing that he had so much time in between the last event of the season and then Bell's, he needed to get his reps in. Surf straight, you know, from the very first round. He was a late entry, got in. So I had to surf from the very first round up until the final, about 8 heats, I want to say. And stoked for him, man. I mean, he looked good, dropped a lot of excellent scores throughout the event. I think he's definitely got the chance to win an event. And I feel like Margaret's is a good way for him. I wouldn't be surprised there. I also think for some sneaky reason that if Snapper's pumping, he's going to be sitting right behind the rock and just charging those things. So watch out for Al.
It's a great
On the
pick.
women's side, this one's a bit harder. I love Erin. I think she's surfing great. Can she put it together over the course of 5 or 6 heats within the same event? That question still has not been answered. So I'm not going to say Erin just yet.
Well, Erin's won. Erin won in Fiji, right?
Right, but as a wild card, though.
Okay,
so,
okay, all right.
You know, full-time CT'er.
Okay, I stand by my Tia pick, but like that's fair.
Because we could say the same thing pretty much about Vahine, right? Like she's been there, she's had the success already.
It's true.
But have you been able to do it as a CT'er? Not yet. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and say that Tia Zabrowski also gonna win an event, at least one in her first season on tour. I also like Margaret for some reason. I think that Snapper's a super good way for her. I also think that Fiji could be a great way for her. I haven't seen her backhand barrel that much, but I know she's got the turns and the skills on the backhand. So watch out for Tia Zabrowski, ladies and gentlemen. Rookie of the year coming up for France. Our second question, Dave, at Tony Taish. Can you explain how falling off the CT Tour / requalifying will work in the new format?
It's a great question. So we're moving back to a version of aggregate points this year, right? And so we're starting in Australia. We're starting April 1st, Rip Curl Pro Bells Beach, presented by Bonsoy. We're running throughout the year and finishing with the Pipe Masters in December. After event 9, which is trestles, there will be a field reduction, similar to how we've had in the past few years. It is later in the season this year. So the top 2/3 will continue on to Surf Abu Dhabi and then Peniche, and then the entire field will come back for the Pipe Masters. So in terms of requalifying for the 2027 Championship Tour, it's still going to be the same cutoff. Everyone's going to have a chance, but those surfers that make that field reduction after trestles will have 2 more opportunities to improve on their scores. Everyone will still get ranked off their best, I believe it's 9 out of 12 events by the end of the year, but the surfers who make it all the way through will get 12 cracks to get 9 results, and the ones that don't will have 10 events to get their best 9 results. So it does provide a huge advantage to those surfers, and then of course the Pipe Masters is going to be worth 1.5 times the points of a standard CT. So a lot is weighted in that last event. So if you don't make that field reduction after trestles, but you're hovering around kind of the cutoff line, you're still a very dangerous person heading into the Pipe Masters. And if you did make that cutoff, but you're hovering around that cutoff line, you are nowhere near safe. Like, pipeline is going to have a lot of stories to it, but it's a great question. And
it is.
We'll be excited to see how it kind of plays out this year.
And great explanation, of course, on your behalf, too. And another thing that we need to point out as well with the schedule change, Portugal in the back end of the year, and that was an event that was actually really beneficial to a lot of people in the early part of the year because it's a beach break.
Sure.
So maybe a bit more luck involved. Conditions change there a lot throughout the course of a day. Sometimes you have all 4 seasons within a day. So that in Abu Dhabi in the back end of the year. And of course, 15,000 points for the champions over there at the Pipe Masters to conclude the year too. So going to be a fun one. Let's get into our last question of today's episode. At Dad Stanfield, he's a good friend of mine. Shout out to Drew, great surfer out of SoCal. Rookie of the year prediction, including returning rookies, Sammy Love, etc. Of course, they're not eligible anymore, but there are a lot of true rookies on tour this year for both the men's and women's side, Dave.
There certainly are. We talked about the women's rookies. There's Yolanda Hopkins, there's Francisca Veselko, there's Nadia Arostarbe, there's Anat Lelior. I'm going to stick with Tia Zabrowski if I think that she's got a shot at winning a CT event. I think that augurs pretty well for her winning Rookie of the Year. But some of these young women who have qualified for the tour really battle tested in a lot of conditions, really strong, really sharp. So I think it's going to be a really competitive race on the women's side and on the men's side, right? So the true rookies we have coming into the CT this year, France's Cowley Vost, who am I looking at? South Africa's Luke Thompson, Australian Oscar Berry, and Brazil's Matthias Herdy. Rookie of the Year amongst this group of kids.
This one's not as like straightforward as cut.
Because
a lot of these guys have won events already, CS and big QSs.
Yeah, they're big winners, and they all have like kind of unique tool sets. When you think about it, I might go with Matthias Herdy. I know he sort of snuck in at the back end of the CS, but he has a really impressive pedigree. He has a lot of weapons. He's been one of those guys, and Mitch, you might be able to comment on this better than I can, but like one of those guys who's been almost at the top of the professional surfing game, had like huge contracts, a ton of attention, lost a lot of those big contracts, kind of humbled himself a bit. His surfing never slowed down though. Like, his surfing's excellent. He's been a wild card at CTs. He's done a lot of damage. He's got a good thing going with Rivia projects under, Julian Wilson and Ryan Callanan. He's been a long time JS Industries team rider. I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he could do it. So yeah, he's going to be my pick for Rookie of the Year, Matthias Herdy on the men's side. But who you got, Mitch?
Really good pick on the men's side. I'm going Tia Zabrowski on the women's side. I think she's just as good, if not better, of a competitor than she is surfer, which is saying a lot.
Right.
Because she's a fantastic surfer. I just think she is extremely good at competing. Her awareness in heats, spatial awareness, time awareness, everything is so extreme. And especially at that young age, there's so much more to gain and a lot more to learn than there is to lose at this point. So Tia, I think she's going to be Rookie of the Year. I think she's, probably going to win one event, maybe even multiple. Could be a title threat in their very first year too. And I think the most impressive thing about her too, she didn't have as much hype, as say Erin or Katie did, because she probably comes from a region that maybe isn't, as strong media-wise. And especially when it comes to the surf industry, here on the West Coast of the United States and in Australia, you're probably hearing a lot more about surfing. Europe, yeah, it's a big thing, but it's not as big as soccer or something else, So I think right here, she's probably going to get the attention that she deserves once she gets success on the CT. Now on the men's side, as you said, less true rookies. I like the Mateus call out. Shout out to his manager, Daniel Cortez, too. He stuck by his side his entire time. Rivia project with Julian and Ryan, they got a good one on their hands with Mateus. I'm going to go with Luke Thompson, though. Huge fan of the kid. I love his style. I think He's got more of a point break style, even though he succeeds at beach breaks quite a bit. But I'm really excited to see him at waves like Bells, Snapper, and he has experience at a couple of those locations, having been, former Challenger Series events too in the past. So I like his expectations of himself too. He's always considered himself one of the best surfers on the planet. Just coming out of the junior ranks too. It's not like it was that long ago where he was still competing at the World Pro Juniors.
21.
So,
he's the youngest. Yeah. Youngest on the men's side. Yeah.
Mateus Hurdy, also a former World Junior champion, but I like Luke Thompson. I think he's going to find success early on. And I think very similar to Alan Cleland, kind of goes under the radar because he's very soft-spoken. But the kid rips, brah. And I'm excited to see him compete in 26 on the championship tour.
He might be soft-spoken, but I will say there's a CT Surfers WhatsApp thread, and a few of us are on there as well, just for communication purposes. And we were announcing, the welcoming the new qualifiers as the CS was concluding there in Newcastle. And I will say that Luke Thompson had the funniest post I'd seen in a long time. I won't say what it is. It wasn't inappropriate or anything, but it made me laugh for like a good hour. That would be his first post to his competitors on the CT. Is pretty good. So I'm looking forward to getting to know the kid. I'm looking forward to watching him do his thing on the CT. And thanks to everyone that wrote in questions at the lineup pod. If we didn't get to them, please keep writing in. We will respond on the DMs or however that works. We love talking to you guys. But Mitch, man, good seeing you on Friday. Good seeing you on the pod tonight. Looking forward to doing this all season long. And Bells is right around the corner, everyone. So get your teams ready.
Let's go 2026. Lock in your fantasy teams. It's going to be a fun one. We got the Pipe Masters to end the year too. CT Surfing is back on in a couple of weeks, ladies and gents.